Hey there, welcome to Sleep Time Story. I am here a few days a week with cozy ghost stories, strange glitches, and UFO mysteries, just the right kind of tales to unwind and drift off to.
Got your own experience to share?
Feel free to reach out. If that sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe and let's get into today's story.
While browsing through a thread of scary stories on Reddit, I came across a chilling tale that caught my attention.
It's definitely worth sharing and listening to.
Thanks to the user Trophies for posting it.
So let's dive in and explore this spooky story together.
What the hell? I sat behind the security desk at my university library holding an envelope that I assumed was meant for me. The new guy was scrawled on the front in jagged script, and I supposed I was the recipient because it didn't get any more new than I was last night. I was scheduled to work my first nighttime shift from 12 to 4 am at my university library.
The hours didn't deter me at all. I'm a serial insomniac, and my class schedule was structured so I could stay up late and sleep in the next day.
This luxury had the unfortunate side effect of limiting my employment options, and in order to stay somewhat afloat in the sea of student debt I was floundering in, I couldn't afford to remain unemployed. When I heard about the night shift at the library from my friend Valerie, who I attended high school with, it seemed like a perfect match. I can't reveal the specific school that I work for, but suffice to say it's a large university in the southern portion of the United States.
Anyway, Val worked the early morning shift, and she mentioned that the guy who worked the late night shift, some guy named Flanders, had quit a few days prior.
When she told me the hours and confirmed that the pay was at least north of minimum wage, I jumped at the opportunity. After spending a week slugging through the 3 departments you have to send paperwork to in order to become an official university employee, my bank account was in desperate need of that first payday. So anyway, last night was my inaugural shift, and it being a Friday night, the library was expectedly dead at midnight when I relieved my new colleague Tori from her post. The employment manuals I was required to read had prepared me extensively for what was by all indications going to be a mundane 4 hours. I started at the security base, a big wooden desk the size of a tank underneath a huge glass window embossed with our university's sigil in the library atrium. Here I would stay for the first 30 minutes of my shift and perform some clerical tasks like checking the book detectors and ensuring the patron counter worked correctly. After those first 30 minutes, I was supposed to make my rounds about the library, an inconceivably large building that according to the employment manual required about 2 miles of walking to complete a perimeter sweep on all 4 floors.
When I settled into my chair behind the behemoth desk, I was exasperated to find the letter. Oh great, I thought. More bullshit protocols to read.
I tore open the envelope to find a sheet of yellow legal paper with numbered lines following a paragraph of writing in the same style as the print on the outside of the envelope. Dear new guy,
do not throw away this list under any circumstances. This is your Bible, your map, and your survival guide all in one fucking succinct document.
I didn't have to leave the shit for you, but my hope is that by leaving this behind, I'll help to curtail your learning curve a bit. Lord knows it can be a steep one.
Anyway, the rules listed in this document are not optional. They aren't suggestions and they aren't advice.
They are a code that you must adhere to or some terrible shit can happen.
You wouldn't understand without experiencing it for yourself, which is exactly what this letter is meant to avoid. So listen up.
If you get through this first night, I'll leave more rules for you tomorrow. Rule 1. Never look at the hallway safety mirrors in the basement corridor.
Keep your eyes low and walk swiftly.
Rule 2. You will encounter an unfathomably tall man in a gray suit. Do not look at his face. Answer any question he asks you with no, sir, and he will go away.
Rule 3.
Stay out of the atrium from 2:15 to 2:16 every night. It's better if you don't see it. Rule 4. You will hear some horrible fucking sounds from study room 219J on occasion.
Don't ever open the door. Rule 5. Always walk beside the bookshelves in the west portion of the 4th floor, never between them.
Rule 6.
If you hear tapping coming from the glass window behind you at the security desk, do not turn around. Rule 7. At 12:15, you'll see a heavy man in a tweed suit hurry past you clutching his briefcase. When you see him walk past you, tell him today is not the day, friend. He'll look relieved, nod, and walk out of the library.
If he gets up the stairs, you're already too late. I was so caught up in reading the letter that I had forgotten to check the student ID of the person who had just rushed by the security desk. I remembered the protocol with a jolt and looked up to call out to the offending student just in time to watch a man, clad in a tweed suit, clear the stairs and slip out of sight onto the library floor. "Oh fuck," I blurted out.
The heavy man in the tweed suit had just been lost from view, now on the 2nd floor of the library.
I didn't know for sure if these rules were legit or some dumb-ass prank on the new guy, but the specificity of the letter and its virgin tone wasn't lost on me. I slipped out from behind the security desk and started up the stairs after the tweed-clad mystery man.
I didn't mention in my previous letter, but the library is closed from 1 to 6 a.m. to students of the university, and really anyone besides me for that matter.
I knew there were a few Chinese exchange students milling around the 3rd floor, but I didn't see anyone on the 2nd floor earlier as I was walking in.
That should make a portly gentleman in an all-tweed suit stick out like a saw thumb, I reasoned. But as I peered over the stairs, expecting some unsettling visual, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. These jackasses are fucking with me, I thought.
But it can't hurt to check around for the dude. After all, Employment Manual made it clear that the library was closed to the general public at 10 p.m., and anyone wishing to gain entry to the library after that time needed to present a valid student ID, and this dude didn't exactly fit the typical demographic.
The 2nd floor is mostly comprised of open space, computer labs, printer stations, and study desks littered the floor plan.
But there was a section of bookshelves in the northeast corner. It's our government original document section, and incidentally one of the more expensive collections at the library. Since I didn't see the man anywhere in the exposed vicinity, I was left to assume that he had taken refuge in the book stacks.
I groaned and started walking that direction.
When I approached, I heard some shuffling coming from behind one of the book stacks that sounded like a mini tornado was ripping through paper.
I whipped around the corner and saw the man yanking books and sheets of paper off of the shelves and frantically flipping through them. "Hey, what the fuck, man?"
I yelled at him.
In an instant, he wheeled around to face me, face red and eyes crazy with thick droplets of sweat trickling off of his cheeks.
He looked like a wild animal backed into a corner.
"Oh shit,
Stay the fuck back." The man screamed at me as he thrust his briefcase in my direction. "Oh, come on, dude, are you going to beat my ass with a briefcase?" I asked, laughing.
And 6'5" and well over 95 kg, and this guy couldn't have been over 5'2".
I was starting to get annoyed that he was throwing a wrench into my first night on the job. The guy looked at me incredulously for a moment and said, "Oh shit, right," and cracked open his briefcase, reached inside and withdrew a small, compact black revolver.
"Though," I said stupidly.
15 minutes into this fucking shift at a library and already I was held at gunpoint.
"Look, man, just settle down for a second."
"No one needs to get hurt. Just put the gun down and tell me what you're looking for and we'll find it together," I pleaded. "Fat fucking chance," the man sneered.
"You bastards want to ruin my name. I won't have it, got it. If only I had a little more time."
The man looked fraught with stress as he tightened his grip on the trigger and leveled it at me. I squeezed my eyes shut for what felt like a month and a half before peeking out again to see the man with the pistol at his side, head hung low.
A wave of relief swept through me.
"Okay, man, let me help you. We'll walk out of here together and figure this thing out."
The man looked up at me, dejected, and met my eyes. "Oh no," he said.
"There's only one way out."
In one swift motion, he lifted the pistol to his right temple, exhaled and pulled the trigger.
An eardrum-shattering bang bombarded my ears as the bullet ripped through his right temple and exploded out the left side of his head, coating the bookshelf to his left in a thick sheet of crimson blood and pink flesh. His body hit the floor violently and his hand released its grip on the gun and it scattered onto the floor. Fuck. I screamed as I watched the carnage before me.
The man lay there, impossible amounts of blood gushing from a softball-sized hole in the side of his skull that soaked the mound of shredded documents that he collapsed on. I backed away shakily, transfixed on the scene in front of me.
"Fuck is going on, dumb fuck?"
A Chinese exchange student with a blue sweater vest approached me from my left, clearly furious.
"No, stay back." I yelled at him.
A few more steps, and he would be within view of the bloody mess in the recesses of the bookshelves.
"You dumbass loud as fuck while we study," he proclaimed as he stomped over and stood toe-to-toe with me. "Please, I need you to step back. A man just committed suicide. I need to call the police," I pleaded.
He looked to the left where the gory events had unfolded seconds earlier and said where the fuck he is.
In a rage.
I looked over and, inexplicably, saw the government original document section in pristine condition.
No sign of the Tweed man or any of his grey matter anywhere. You sick fuck. You make sick-ass joking loud as fuck. Stay quiet or we call campus police. The exchange student spat and spun around, walking back to the stairs. I stood there stunned beyond belief. trying to grapple with what had just happened.
I clearly saw the man nearly blow his head clean off, douse the books in his blood, and fall onto a mountain of shredded papers, but none of that was reflected in the current setup of the section.
In a daze, with my hands trembling, I walked back to the stairs and descended to the security desk.
I walked behind the desk, eyes wide in disbelief, and lowered myself into the desk chair and clutched the letter.
It was clear that whatever I'd just experienced, someone else had experienced as well.
I scrutinized the paper deeply.
If I was getting through the rest of this fucking shift, I decided I had to do everything this piece of paper said.
I glanced over at the digital readout on the clock near the computer at the security desk. It reads 0041. About 20 minutes to go until the straggling students would have to vacate the library and I would be left to my own devices for 3 hours.
I scoured the paper, reading and rereading the rules. I had already violated 7, but even though that experience was certainly jarring, it didn't appear to have created any lasting damage. I surveyed the government original documents section at length and couldn't find any semblance of a clue that a man had just committed suicide. Maybe the author of the letter intended for me to start off my shift with an infraction. It definitely got my attention, and didn't really cause any harm. Well, okay, obviously I was still a little fucked up from watching that horrific sequence, but my prolonged search for any sign of the interaction yielding no results had allowed me to calm down somewhat. My thoughts were interrupted by a shocking chime coming through the PA system.
Da dang. Attention, library patrons. The library will be closing in 10 minutes. The library will be closing in 10 minutes. Please make your final selections and exit the library.
Have a good night. The last few students that were holed up in the third-floor study area walked down the stairs, past me and out the door. Have a splendid evening, my good man.
I do apologize for my belligerence earlier. 'Twas not intended to be an assault on your character.
You seem like a sublime chap. The Chinese exchange student from my previous encounter said as he tipped his top hat and exited through the main set of door with his compatriots. Fuck, that was eloquent.
With the holdouts having all trickled out from the massive interior of the library, I was all alone in the gargantuan building. Or so I hoped. I took a shaky breath and walked away from the desk to begin my first perimeter sweep of the library.
I started in the basement.
The basement has a network of corridors that are not utilized by the student body or the general public, and are mostly only frequented by library staff. These hallways compose a pretty complex labyrinth of pathways that I certainly hadn't mastered yet. The hallways had sharp, biting angles, and accordingly had hallway safety mirrors in the upper corner of the ceiling.
I know that they had saved me from bumping into another staff member who was coming the opposite direction a few times earlier that evening.
I approached the first sharp turn in the network of hallways, and my eyes instinctually gravitated upwards.
The advice of the letter came back to me just in time. Rule 1. Never look at the hallway safety mirrors in the basement corridor.
Keep your eyes low and walk swiftly.
I averted my eyes back down to the floor and turned the corner briskly. The coast was clear. No big deal, I thought.
I continued walking deeper into the heart of the basement.
Some important background information about the composition of the basement is that most library staff members will never actually lay eyes on the majority of the floor. The staff always exist on the periphery of a massive area that is closed off to everyone but the most privileged security personnel.
This portion of the basement belonged to the State Historical Society and was well fortified.
No one that I knew had ever actually entered into that portion of the basement. I had just finished my perimeter sweep of the basement and was beginning to turn around to return to the stairs near the security desk when I heard deep and ragged breaths coming from around the corner. "Hello?" I shouted out reflexively.
There was no response, just the continuation of the deep and uneven breaths.
I was stuck. I had to walk past that hallway to get out of the maze of corridors that I had embedded myself in. The temptation to just look up at the mirror that I knew was conveniently located at the turn in the hallway was immense.
Why encounter the unknown and potentially dangerous without having any idea of what it is you're about to confront? If I looked at the mirror, I would know what the source of that horrid breathing was without having to face it head on.
And it definitely wasn't moving. I'd heard no sound of approach, and the breathing sounded just as loud as it had been when I first heard it. But I had made a promise to myself to adhere to the rules, and I had already seen the result of disobeying these guidelines first, and
I took a deep breath and careened around the corner, eyes shut and head down. I stood there for a moment, afraid to raise my gaze. As I did, I saw the hallway in its entirety, nothing amiss. Whatever had made those noises wasn't in this stretch of hallway anymore.
"There's one point for the follow-the-rules approach," I thought.
Hastily, I made my way back to the stairs and ascended to the second floor, anxious to leave the cramped quarters of those damned hallways behind me.
My sweep of the second floor was much less exciting, and I completed it without incident in about 20 minutes.
I walked up to the third floor, and aside from a bat flying over my head and scaring the piss out of me, that too was uneventful.
I was getting ready to embark on the stairs up to the fourth floor when I heard the sound of the library main doors opening 2 floors below.
Those doors had been locked for nearly an hour now. It made no sense that they could be opened from the exterior. Hesitantly, I inched my way down the stairs, staying alert for any indication that someone could be inside the library.
When I turned the corner on the stairs to walk down the last flight of stairs that opened up into the atrium, I was shocked to see 2 gray poles at the foot of the stairs. What the fuck? I thought. And then my blood ran cold with the realization those weren't poles at all. They were legs.
Long, slender legs.
In all, from my perch at the top of the flight of stairs, I could see up to about chest height of whatever monstrosity was standing at the bottom of the staircase.
I recoiled instinctively, backing into the wall. In a deep baritone that vibrated my bones, the man spoke. "I know that you are up there," the voice said. My breath caught in my throat and I stood as still as I could. The man spoke quietly, but the immense depth of his voice rumbled through the air like a clap of thunder. "Are you afraid?" the man asked.
Remembering the advice from the rules, answer any question he asks you with "no sir" and he will go away, I squeaked out "no sir."
"Then you're fucking stupid. Are you fucking stupid?"
The voice had taken on a menacing tone, booming in the small staircase. "No, sir,"
I said as confidently as I could.
"Would you like to see my face?"
the man asked.
"No, sir," I replied. The man stood motionless for a few more moments. Blood had begun to stain the upper reaches of his visible clothing, turning his gray suit a deep crimson. I watched thick, wet drops roll off of his sleeves and past his long, bony fingers as they plopped onto the linoleum.
A few more seconds went by and the man abruptly turned around and strolled away from the stairs.
I checked my watch.
3:03 a.m.
The library was eerily quiet. The silence felt deafening. I felt as if the world was closing in around me. My wheezing breaths, a product of me trying to calm down, filled the staircase with noise.
But I didn't feel alone.
It's a horrifying sensation to feel as vulnerable as I did then. These monstrosities were coming and going with impunity. I couldn't stop them or control them, and I was left to navigate these horrifying interactions with only a stupid fucking piece of paper as my guide. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was a baby-backed bitch for a few minutes. I sat with my back to the wall on the staircase and tried to think. Okay, that was horrifying, I thought, getting the obvious out of the way. But it still went exactly as the letter predicted. The tall man hadn't rushed me or tried to harm me, even though he certainly seemed capable of inflicting damage. I abided by the instructions and I emerged totally unscathed. At every turn, the letter had proved both valid and valuable.
The information I received was clearly comprehensive and ostensibly accurate.
The guy that I took over for had done the job for months, and he was still alive. I could get through one night. I checked my watch.
3:21 a.m.
I walked down the staircase and returned to the security desk. I quickly reviewed the letter. Rule 1. Never look at the hallway safety mirrors in the basement corridor.
Keep your eyes low and walk swiftly.
Rule 2. You will encounter an unfathomably tall man in a gray suit. Do not look at his face. Answer any question he asks you with "no, sir," and he will go away.
Rule 3. Stay out of the atrium from 215 to 216 every night.
It's better if you don't see it. Rule 4. You will hear some horrible fucking sounds from study room 219J on occasion.
Don't ever open the door. Rule 5. Always walk beside the bookshelves in the west portion of the 4th floor, never between them.
Rule 6.
If you hear tapping coming from the glass window behind you at the security desk, do not turn around. Rule 7. At 12:15, you'll see a heavy man in a tweed suit hurry past you clutching his briefcase. When you see him walk past you, tell him today is not the day, friend. He'll look relieved, nod, and walk out of the library.
If he gets up the stairs, you're already too late. I had already dealt with our tweed-clad pal, encountered knockoff Slender Man, and I had made sure I was in another location in the library other than the atrium from 215 to 216, so that wasn't a concern. That left Rule 1, 4, 5, and 6 as threats still in play.
Rule 1 seemed pretty easy. I already followed it successfully and stayed safe. Rule 4 seems straightforward enough. Just have to steer clear of the 2nd floor study rooms.
Rule 5 would only be a concern when I entered the 4th floor, which only happened once a night for the security sweep, and I didn't need to enter the bookshelf aisles for any reason. Rule 6. My thoughts were interrupted by a faint ticking sound from behind me. I was initially puzzled. The only thing behind me was the glass window embossed with our university's sigil.
I thought it must have been a twig or something being blown into the window, as it was extremely windy that night.
I was turning around to investigate when I stopped just in time and recalled the contents of Rule 6, the very rule that I was interrupted while reading. Rule 6.
If you hear tapping coming from the glass window behind you at the security desk, do not turn around. I realized that what I thought was a twig was much more deliberate and sharp-sounding than a stray twig.
It had increased in both frequency and volume to the point where it had to be performed by a person. It wasn't a twig I'd heard. It was the click of a fingernail on glass.
Someone had to be standing inches behind me, right up against the window pane.
The tapping, which had started out as slow and deliberate, had sped up and was clearly more forceful than it had been a moment ago.
The tapping was almost frantic. It became difficult to distinguish one tap from another.
"Fuck this," I said. I promptly stood up, walked around the side of the desk, and basically sprinted to the stairs, leaving whatever fucked up entity was tapping on the window in my dust. I laughed to myself when I was safely on the second floor.
I always wondered why the protagonist in horror movies didn't just walk away instead of lingering in the demon-possessed area, and here I'd gone and done it. Not so hard. I sat up in the second floor commons and flipped through Tinder on my phone. I checked my watch. 3:53 a.m.
Well, shit. I thought, relief beginning to wash over me.
I survived the most wet library on planet Earth.
Before leaving, I had to put my black, university-issued work polo in the employee garment cabinet downstairs. It was a bit of a walk, and I thought about just taking the polo with me, but I didn't want to end my first shift by breaking a library protocol. I sighed and strolled down the stairs, stealing a glance at the window behind the desk as I did.
Totally normal. I was practically beaming with catharsis when I entered into the network of hallways, feet away from tossing my polo back in the cabinet and booking it home. When I came upon the first turn, my eyes naturally flitted up the wall and my blood turned to ice.
I had been so caught up in the promise of leaving the library that I had forgotten Rule 1.
I froze, feet from the corner with my eyes transfixed on the hallway mirror.
I couldn't believe my eyes.
Staring back into the mirror, feet away from me on the other side of the wall was a man. His skin was jet black. His clothes were in tatters, held together by a few threads.
He was barefoot and a massive human, at least 6'6" and riddled with muscles.
His eyes were wild. They shone a chilling yellow in the reflection, locked with my stare. But the most noticeable thing about him was his face. His cheeks had been sliced from the corners of his mouth nearly to his ears, causing his face to droop forward, wet blood bubbling round his white teeth. A moment passed where we held each other's gaze, his breathing unbelievably loud, shuddering his whole ribcage as he inhaled and exhaled rapidly.
Then the lights in the hallway went out.
I saw his yellow eyes widen and a piercing shriek filled the hallway.
I heard footsteps thundering around the corner. Breaking out of my fear-induced paralysis, I jolted and began sprinting away from the corner, back towards the atrium. I heard the man closing in on me, that shriek coming from just a foot or two behind me, ripping into my ears.
just as he was nearly on me, the screaming stopped. The footsteps stopped. The lights flicked on, and I whirled around to find myself alone in the hallway. There was no sign of the man anywhere, but the door on the right side of the hallway was flung wide open. I was shocked, as this is the first time I'd ever heard of that area being unlocked. The door read, State Historical Society. Authorized personnel only. Quickly I ran to the door, slammed it shut, and ran out the door of the library, throwing my work polo on the desk as I ran by and hastily locking the door behind me. I had finished my first shift. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.